I have three things for you today. Called by God, called by the community, and called by name. But first, called by God. Something that sets the Christian mindset apart from our American 21st century cultural mindset here is that out there, young people, us, are trained that you decide what to make of the rest of your life. You determine your identity and your destiny, and you do what feels right to you without any external influence or pressure from the outside, which, as we've seen, is a pretty tall order for any young person to have to create their whole life all by themselves. Now, contrast that with the Christian approach. You rely upon God for guidance as you make decisions in your life. You rely upon others for guidance and bounce ideas off of them. You take things in from your surroundings. You learn your strengths and your weaknesses. And then after finding out where God is leading you, then you respond and make a decision and commit to that decision. Just as the fishermen in today's gospel left everything behind to follow Jesus, something for all young Catholics and all young Christians should be a question that we're asking ourselves. Where is God leading me? Not so much what's my career going to be? What's my job? How am I going to make money? That's important, but it's not the most important thing. More like the questions that have to do with our lifestyle. Is God inviting me to get married? And if so, to whom? Is God inviting me to serve the church as a priest? Is God inviting me to serve the church as a religious sister or brother? Or is God inviting me to stay single and to serve others more fully that way? If God is left out of the equation, then what you're left with is generations of young people with no compass, no direction, and oftentimes no meaning. So in the Christian approach, all of us are called by God to something special. That's one of our common convictions. Core to being Christian is that God is inviting you to something special, and He's inviting me to something very important. What we call that in the church is a vocation. Now, traditionally, lots of Catholics have understood that in the church, as you're looking at what lifestyles play certain parts, people have tended to put priests and nuns up here, and then everyone else is down here. Does that sound familiar? Probably how a lot of you were brought up. That's not a good way to see how the church works, because then the rest of us use that as an excuse to not be the first teachers of the faith to our children. Sometimes people talk to me about the priesthood shortage, and they ask the question, what's going to happen to all these churches when all these retired priests leave, and now it's up to the young priests? But the question that's on my mind that might be more important is this. What about the drastic shortage of Catholic marriages in recent years? Or what about the vast swaths of young people who are sent through the factory line of the sacraments? They get baptized, first confession, first communion, confirmation, but they're never told to ask God the question, where are you leading me, Lord? All vocations and all Catholics are important to the life of the church. Because after all, priests and nuns, we do not produce more priests and nuns. Okay, it doesn't work that way with the vows and promises we make. Priests and sisters and all good Catholics come from good, healthy marriages and holy families. They come from parish communities made up of people who support them, lift them up, and challenge them. And that's where the community comes in. So young people generally are not able to discern their vocations well. For most of human history, young people have been brought up and formed in large part by their parents, by their families, their social organizations, and by their peers. But what about today's young generation? If a young person today has a question, are you more likely to go to your parents and ask them? What about other family members? What about your peers? What about going to God in prayer? They're probably not going to go there. What's the first place that the youth go to today to find answers to life's questions? They go to this. They go to social media, not the places where you want to discover your path in life. Generation Z, which is ages 13 to 25 today, is often called the loneliest generation. Despite being the most connected, it's the loneliest. And it's fitting because so many have become isolated from others due to social media, without mentors and without social systems to support them and encourage them. According to the Springtide Institute, 45% of this generation says, "I feel as if no one understands me." 45%. So when we talk about vocations in the church, how much more important is community? When we talk about us being a holy family parish, part of the reason that we have that name is to become a family. Because priests, brothers, and sisters do not grow on trees. They do come from healthy families. They come from our parishes, and they come from supportive, encouraging communities. That's where my vocation of the priesthood came from. Didn't come from far from here. It came right from here. This is where I learned to love God and listen to his voice. This is where I was challenged to think about my vocation. And this is where many people often came up to me when I was younger, namely older people, and said, "I think you would make a great priest." You know, my first instinct, run. Get out quick. I wanted absolutely none of that, especially the added pressure that would come upon me. But as much as I wanted to run away from it, the thought of the priesthood kept coming back to me. Something I just couldn't avoid. As much as I wanted to become a doctor and have a family of my own, God kept putting that idea back into my heart. Till one day when I was in college, I was at Mass, and as I was walking out of Mass, a woman confronted me in the hallway. And she knew that I had been thinking about the priesthood for a little while, and so she asked me the question, "What kinds of thoughts do you get when you think about the lifestyle of a priest?" And I said, "Well, it seems like a peaceful life. Lots of priests I know are very joyful and are very supportive." And she pierced me with a question that is forever seared into my memory. She said this, "Then what's it going to be, Dr. Edquist or Father Edquist?" I was caught like a deer in the headlights. I got mad and I stormed out of there. And as mad as I was that someone had confronted me about this, God used that question to change my heart. And little by little, God revealed to me, this is real. This invitation is true. And so that's why I'm here today. First of all, because of God, but secondly, and very important, because the encouragement and challenging that I got from other people. I was not able to become a priest on my own. Nobody is able to live a healthy lifestyle on their own. People saw something that I didn't. And I hope I'm not an isolated case here in LaPorte. Ideally, this is a parish where all of our young people are being invited to pursue greatness no matter where God is calling them. Ideally, this can be a place where young people are inspired to pursue holy marriage, if that's what God's calling them to, or to pursue priesthood or religious life. It's a lot for a young person to make a lifelong commitment. And how much more so if that decision involves setting aside marriage and family life in the process. But in order for that to happen, our young people need people like you. They need the community to support them and lift them up in a culture that neither supports them, nor challenges them, nor encourages them. So that's why today I want to give you parishioners the opportunity to support the young people of our parish. Today we begin the Called by Name campaign. This is something that happens this time of year all across the country. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to submit some names of young people within this parish community who you think God might be inviting to consider vocation to the priesthood or to the religious life. In a few moments, the ushers are going to be distributing these called by name cards. There's also a QR code on the cover of your bulletin that you can scan if you would like to submit names that way. What we're inviting you to do is to write down some qualities in certain young people in our community that you think would make them a great either priest or religious sister or brother or in any other ministry related to the church. What are some of the qualities to be looking for? No one has to be perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm still working on lots of these. But some of the things you might be looking for is someone who's at least high school age into their young adult years. They attend Sunday Mass regularly, receive the sacraments. They live a life of prayer. They live integrity and authenticity. There's something genuine about them. They live a life of service toward others. They're good leaders. They're open to being formed and challenged and made better. They have a desire to strive for excellence in everything they do. And most importantly, they wish to grow in their personal holiness and relationship with God. Now, a few things to note. I'm inviting you to focus on young people within this parish community, but if you think of others outside of LaPorte, maybe family members from somewhere else, you can feel free to submit those names as well. You can turn them into the collection basket today, or if you want some more time to think about it, you can bring them home and bring them back next week. You might be asking yourself the question, what are we going to be doing with this information? Well, this is not a voting process. You are not electing your next priest, okay? This is not information that is going to be made public. And we're not using these names to coerce young people in our parish to pursue a vocation that God's not calling them to. Instead, we're going to be contacting these people whose names are submitted and letting them know that you see within them special qualities that would make them great priests or religious. Now, I recognize this may not be easy for some of us. As much as we want to be a holy family here, we're still a pretty large parish and maybe we don't know each other. So let me put it this way to make it more relatable. Do you know any young man in this parish that if you gave him a few years to mature and learn more about his faith and grow in virtue, you could see him leading this parish someday as a priest? Or do you know any young woman in this parish who you could see thriving in a religious community as a sister, serving the poor or the needy in fields like education or healthcare or social outreach? Because ultimately, why are we inviting you to put these names forward? It's because young people are not good at seeing qualities within them that will help them into the future. For those of us who are older, we've been through that. We know what it's like to learn. And so when you can point out qualities that maybe they don't see in them, then they're more likely to respond to that. They'll feel encouraged and better equipped to respond to wherever God's inviting them. So at this time, I invite the ushers now to distribute these called by name cards. You can fill these cards out, or you can scan a QR code and submit a name online. I invite you to please take some time to pray about this and ask God how he can help you to encourage the young people of this parish. Thank you.